I wanted to install some electronics. I wanted the control model to light up, and I want some sound effects on the model as well. This is where I started playing around with the Arduino Nano microprocessor. Now, I'd never used the Arduino set before, and this is the first project in which I've used any kind of electronics to this extent. Therefore, I had to look everything up online. Luckily, YouTube is a very good resource on how to begin and get started with the Arduino set, and there are hundreds if not thousands of tutorials available. One of the benefits of using Arduinos in projects such as this is that it's very inexpensive and accessible. Despite having very limited experience in programming, I found the software very easy to use and understand. And after maybe about 20 minutes or so from beginning, I actually had a flashing LED light. Now, I know that that doesn't sound particularly exciting by itself, but when you come from a pretty much non-existent programming background and you manage to get some LEDs flashing, it is actually very rewarding. I soon realised that if I wanted to include some sound effects, it was best to add an additional MP3 player module to my setup, and it really helped to bring my idea of this model to life. It was also a good time to invest in a few small cheap electronics, such as a breadboard, a set of jumper wires, and the rest of it I pretty much scavenged from bits I had lying around the house. The LEDs that I used were recycled from an old set of Christmas tree lights, and the speaker was from a pair of broken wireless headphones. I also decided to include the previously built control model and the lighting that I was using as a way of encouraging myself to focus on the project. Seeing the control model light up and fade and hear the sound effects at the same time was very exciting, and it gave me a good indication of how the final project would actually turn out. In addition, my two youngest children, Nathan, who's 3, and my daughter Michaela, who's 12, both took a keen interest in the electronics as well. Nathan found it incredibly exciting to press the buttons and set the lights off and hear the sounds. And my daughter was interested in creating a traffic light system using 3 coloured LEDs, a little project that I did on the side. Now, if you are a parent yourself and you are interested in getting your children involved in any kind of electronic projects that are fairly easy to start with, then I would definitely recommend looking into the Arduino sets. Now, what I will do is I will post some links down below in the description to get you started, and also some links to items that you can buy fairly cheaply on eBay or Amazon. I saw this video here. I started to wonder if I could actually bypass any of the programming and build a much simpler circuit without the Arduino instead. I soon discovered that if I connect the LED light directly to the speaker out of the DF player, then it would actually light up at the same time as playing the audio. Which was exactly what I wanted. Now, you're probably watching this video screaming at the screen saying, you cannot do this, you cannot connect an LED to the output of a MP3 player module, it won't work, it's gonna blow up and that sort of thing. And you might be right. However, it seemed to work. The reason I wanted to use the Arduino Nano was because in my initial idea I wanted a button press that would activate the light and sound. I also wanted to use a button to toggle and switch between different sound effects. So one, for example, when the unit is firing up, one when it's sat in its dormant state and it's just active pulsing, and one when it wants to shut down. When it came to the sound effects, I did find quite a few online that I felt were very Guyver Unit-esque. Using Audacity, a free audio editing software that you can get online, I combined all of the sound effects I'd got to make a audio sequence that included the firing up of the Guyver Unit, the pulse when it's online, and when it powers down again. I put that onto an SD card, installed it onto the MP3 player module, and played it back with the LED attached to it as well. And everything started to come together. It was at that point I got very, very excited because the whole project was finally coming together, and I just could not wait to get the electronics installed into the inside of the unit and get this project finished. I started to solder all of the components in place so that I can install them into the unit. My soldering skills, not the best, I'll be honest, but after a quick test, everything was working. When it came to powering the components, I also had that already organised, because on the back is actually 3 AAA batteries with an output of about 4.5 volts, which was actually powerful enough to power everything I needed. The electronics were actually being powered by the 3 AAA batteries, and everything was completely self-contained within the unit. All I needed to do was install it, and I could finish the project. It was at that point something went badly wrong. Somehow I managed to short circuit the DF player MP3 module, and nothing would play from that point onwards. I also realised that the chip on the back was actually getting very, very hot. I did order a new replacement MP3 module. I actually ordered 2, just one as a spare, just in case anything happened. I didn't fancy waiting to have to replace it if the worst came to the worst. The first thing I did was I opened the package and gave both DF players just a quick test using a breadboard to make sure that they both worked. It was then time to start connecting all of the wires. Using a soldering iron and some solder, basically I reconnected the speaker and the LED to the same output, which is these ones here. I then soldered all of the connections together as in this diagram. Once all of the connections had been made, it was then time to actually install them into the unit. The push switch I had decided to apply to make sure it was as obscured as possible. Taking a small drill to the unit, I carefully drilled a couple of holes to feed the wires through. Once the outer casing pieces had been replaced, it was pretty much impossible to spot unless you knew you were actually looking for it. One of the things I did notice is that when I leave the power supply connected to the DF player and it's not in use, it does start to cause some issues. The DF player starts to make random noises and sound effects, and I think that that's just one of the glitches of a constant power supply being fed into a device that doesn't really have an automatic off switch. So in order to combat that, I decided that I wanted to include a hidden on-off switch in the unit as well, so that I could prevent power from travelling to the DF player when the unit's not being used. To do this, I drilled a small hole in the side of the battery compartment, and using my rotary tool to make sure that the hole was large enough to install the switch. This switch was simply soldered between the positive terminal of the battery compartment and installed into the unit. I then very carefully replaced the batteries and did a quick test of the unit. Success! It worked, and again it was playing the sounds and lights exactly as I had planned. I then finalised the model by dry fitting everything into place before finally attaching it with some hot glue.